Sarah Martinez pushed her cleaning cart down the endless chrome corridors of the Krellian Empire's administrative building. The wheels squeaked against the polished floor, a sound that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat over the past 3 years. She hummed softly while she worked, an old earth tune her grandmother used to sing. The Krellians towered above her at 8 feet tall, their blue-scaled skin shimmering under the artificial lights. They barely noticed her as she cleaned their offices, conference rooms, and hallways. To them, she was just another inferior species doing menial work. Humans had only been part of the Galactic Empire for 20 years, and most aliens still saw them as weak primitives who were lucky to get jobs at all. Sarah didn't mind being invisible. It made her job easier. She could clean in peace without anyone bothering her. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough to support herself and send some money back to her sister on Earth. She had learned long ago that keeping her head down and doing good work was the best way to survive in the galaxy. Today started like any other day. She arrived at the building before dawn, changed into her gray uniform, and began her rounds. The executive floor was always her first stop because the important officials liked their offices spotless before they arrived. She had just finished polishing Director Vactor's desk when she heard shouting from down the hall. "You dare question my authority?" The voice belonged to Commander Zeklon, head of building security. Sarah recognized his harsh tone immediately. He was known for his terrible temper and hatred of humans. "I'm just saying the human workers deserve fair treatment," another voice replied. Sarah peeked around the corner and saw Subdirector Melka, one of the few Krellians who treated the human staff with respect. "They work hard and cause no trouble. They are parasites," Zeklon snarled, his tail whipping back and forth in anger. "Weak creatures who exist only because we allow it. They should be grateful we don't send them all back to their pathetic planet." Sarah's hands tightened on her mop handle, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had heard worse things said about humans. Getting angry wouldn't help anyone. "The Empire's laws protect all member species," Melka said firmly, "including humans. Laws can change," Zeklon said with a cruel smile. "And when they do, I'll personally ensure every human in this building learns their proper place, starting with that cleaning woman who's always skulking around." Sarah's blood ran cold. He was talking about her. She quickly backed away and returned to her cart, pretending she hadn't heard anything. But her hands shook as she gathered her supplies. Zeklon had always made her nervous, but now she felt genuinely afraid. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She kept expecting Zeklon to appear and cause trouble, but he must have been busy elsewhere. When her shift ended, she practically ran to the employee locker room to change. All she wanted was to go home and call her husband. Marcus would know what to do. He always did. Even though they could only afford to live in the cheapest district of the city, their small apartment was a safe haven. Marcus worked construction during the day, honest work that kept him strong despite the lighter gravity on this planet. At night, they would cook dinner together and talk about their dreams of saving enough money to visit Earth again. As Sarah walked home through the crowded streets, she noticed more security patrols than usual. Krellian soldiers in full armor marched past, their plasma rifles gleaming. Something was happening, but she didn't know what. The other humans on the street looked worried too, hurrying to their destinations with their heads down. She finally reached their apartment building, a rundown structure that housed mostly human workers and a few other lesser species. The elevator was broken again, so she climbed the 10 flights of stairs. By the time she reached their door, she was out of breath and her feet hurt from standing all day. "Marcus," she called as she entered. "Are you home?" "In the kitchen, honey," his deep voice replied. She felt some of her tension ease just hearing him. She found him at the stove, stirring something that smelled amazing. Marcus was a big man, 6.5 feet tall with broad shoulders and arms thick with muscle. His dark skin was marked with old scars from his younger days before they met. But his smile when he saw her was gentle and warm. "Rough day?" he asked, pulling her into a hug. "Commander Zeklon was threatening humans again," she said, leaning into his strength. "I'm worried he might actually do something this time." Marcus's expression hardened for a moment, but then he kissed her forehead. "Don't worry about him. I won't let anyone hurt you. Sarah wanted to believe him, but what could one human construction worker do against the security chief of the Krellian Empire? She didn't know that her husband was keeping his own secrets, or that their quiet life was about to change forever. The next morning arrived too soon. Sarah woke to find Marcus already dressed for work, sitting on the edge of their bed, watching her sleep. The worry lines around his eyes seemed deeper than usual. "You don't have to go today," he said softly. "We have enough saved that you could take a few days off." Sarah sat up and touched his face. "We need the money. Besides, hiding won't make things better. I'll be careful." Marcus caught her hand and held it tight. "Promise me something. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me immediately. I don't care if I'm in the middle of pouring foundation. You call me." "I promise," Sarah said, though she wondered what he thought he could do if Zeklon decided to cause trouble. The Krellians were stronger than humans, faster too, and they had weapons. At the administrative building, Sarah found chaos. Security guards were everywhere, checking identification and searching bags. The other human workers huddled together, whispering nervously. Sarah joined them, trying to understand what was happening. "They say someone stole classified information," whispered Chun, who worked in the mailroom. "They think it was a human." "That's ridiculous," said Maria from the cafeteria. "None of us even have access to classified areas." "Doesn't matter," Chun replied. "They're looking for an excuse to get rid of us." Sarah's stomach churned as she remembered Zeklon's words from yesterday. This felt like the excuse he had been waiting for. She went through security slowly, letting them scan her and search her cart thoroughly. The guards seemed disappointed when they found nothing suspicious. The day progressed with painful tension. Every time Sarah entered a room, conversation stopped. Krellian employees watched her with suspicion and disgust. Some deliberately knocked things over after she had cleaned, forcing her to start again. She kept her head down and did her work, but inside she was screaming. Around midday, she was cleaning the conference room on the 15th floor when Zeklon himself appeared. He filled the doorway, his yellow eyes gleaming with malice. Two guards flanked him, hands resting on their weapons. "Human," he spat the word like a curse. "You will come with us for questioning." Sarah's heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "I haven't done anything wrong. That remains to be seen. You have access to all areas of this building. You could easily have taken the information." "I'm a janitor," Sarah said. "I don't even know how to access the computer systems." Zeklon's tail lashed the air. "Silence. You will come now, or I will have you dragged." Sarah set down her cleaning supplies carefully. Her hands shook, but she forced herself to appear calm. As she walked toward them, she remembered Marcus's words and quickly pressed the emergency button on her communication device. It would send him an alert with her location. They took her to a small room in the security section. It was cold and bare, with only a metal table and 2 chairs. Zeklon loomed over her while the guards stood by the door. "We know one of you humans is a spy," Zeklon began. "The Empire has enemies who would pay well for our secrets. Confess now, and things will go easier for you." "I don't know anything about any spy," Sarah said truthfully. "I just clean offices." "Lies." Zeklon slammed his fist on the table, making her jump. "You humans are all thieves and liars. Your species should never have been admitted to the Empire." For 2 hours, he questioned her. The same accusations over and over. Sarah answered honestly each time, but Zeklon didn't want the truth. He wanted a confession. When she refused to give him one, his frustration grew. "Perhaps you need motivation," he said finally. "Guards, prepare the neural probe." Sarah's blood turned to ice. Neural probes were supposed to be illegal for use on Empire citizens, but she doubted Zeklon cared about laws. The device could tear through her mind, leaving her brain damaged or worse. One of the guards hesitated. "Sir, regulations state." "I make the regulations here." Zeklon roared. "Do as I command." The door suddenly exploded inward. The heavy metal flew across the room like paper, slamming into the far wall. Sarah gasped as Marcus stepped through the destroyed doorway. But this wasn't the gentleman who cooked her dinner. This was someone else entirely. His eyes were cold and focused, his body moving with lethal grace. He wore his construction clothes, but Somehow he looked like a warrior in them. The guards reached for their weapons, but Marcus was already moving. He crossed the room in a blur, faster than any human should be able to move. His fist connected with the first guard's chest, sending the 8-foot alien flying backward. The second guard managed to draw his plasma pistol, but Marcus grabbed his wrist and twisted. The crack of breaking bone echoed in the small room. Zeklon backed away, his yellow eyes wide with shock. Impossible. Humans can't. Marcus turned to him, and Sarah saw something in her husband's face that made her gasp. It was controlled violence, decades of training and experience written in every line of his body. "My name is Marcus Chan Martinez," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Former Sergeant Major, Earth Defense Corps, Special Operations Division. Veteran of the Proxima Campaign, the Mars Rebellion, and a dozen classified operations you've never heard of. And you just made the biggest mistake of your life." Zeklon fumbled for his weapon, but Marcus moved like lightning. A single strike to the commander's throat sent him to his knees, gasping for air. Marcus knelt beside him and spoke very quietly. "You threatened my wife. You were going to torture her. For that, I should kill you." His hand moved to Zeklon's neck. But Sarah wouldn't want that. "So instead, you're going to confess to your superiors that you fabricated evidence about the spy to frame humans. You're going to resign your position and leave this planet. If I ever see you again, if you ever come near my wife again, I won't be so merciful. Not if you understand." Zeklon nodded frantically, terror replacing his earlier arrogance. Marcus stood and turned to Sarah, his expression softening instantly. "Are you hurt?" he asked, checking her for injuries. "No, E. Marcus, how did you?" "I'll explain everything at home," he said gently. "Right now, we need to leave before more security arrives." He took her hand and led her from the room, stepping over the groaning guards. Sarah's mind spun with questions, but she followed him. The man she had married was not who she thought he was, but he had come for her. He had saved her. As they left the building, sirens beginning to wail behind them, Sarah realized their quiet life was over. But looking at Marcus, seeing the fierce protectiveness in his eyes, she wasn't afraid anymore. Back in their apartment, Sarah sat on their worn couch while Marcus secured the door and windows. He moved with military precision, checking sight lines and setting up some kind of electronic devices she didn't recognize. When he was satisfied, he sat beside her and took her hands. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have told you the truth years ago." "Tell me now," Sarah said quietly. "Tell me everything." Marcus took a deep breath. "I wasn't always a construction worker. Before we met, I was part of Earth's most elite military unit. We were called Juggernauts. Genetically enhanced soldiers created to fight in the worst conflicts humanity faced." Sarah stared at him. "Genetically enhanced? But that's illegal under Empire law." "It is now," Marcus nodded. "But 25 years ago, before Earth joined the Empire, we were in a war for survival. The Centauri colonies had rebelled, and they had alien technology we couldn't match. Normal soldiers didn't stand a chance. So Earth's military created us. Stronger, faster, with enhanced healing and reflexes. They made us into living weapons." He stood and paced the small room. "There were only 500 of us. We won the war, saved Earth and its colonies. But afterward, when Earth was negotiating to join the Galactic Empire, our existence became a problem. Enhanced humans violated every treaty. So officially, the Juggernaut program never existed. We were given new identities and told to disappear into civilian life." "Why didn't you tell me?" Sarah asked, hurt creeping into her voice. Marcus knelt in front of her. "Because I wanted to leave that life behind. When I met you, you saw me as just Marcus. Not a weapon, not a killer, just a man who loved you. I was selfish. I wanted to keep being that man." Sarah touched his face, feeling the faint scars she now understood came from battles, not construction accidents. "You are that man. You're my husband who cooks dinner and holds me when I have bad dreams. But you're also the man who just saved my life." "I put you in danger," Marcus said. "Once the Empire realizes what I am, they'll come for both of us. Enhanced humans are considered weapons of mass destruction. They'll want to study me or eliminate me. A heavy knock shook their door. Marcus was on his feet instantly, pushing Sarah behind him. "Who is it?" "Sergeant Martinez," a familiar voice called. "It's Director Vactor. I'm alone and unarmed. We need to talk." Sarah gasped. The director himself? Here at their apartment? Marcus considered for a moment, then opened the door. The elderly Krellian stood in their hallway, looking oddly small without his usual retinue of assistants. "May I come in?" Vactor asked politely. Marcus stepped aside. Vactor entered and looked around their humble home before focusing on them. "First, Mrs. Martinez, I apologize for what happened today. Commander Zeklon's actions were inexcusable. He has been arrested and will face full prosecution." "How did you know Marcus was a Juggernaut?" Sarah asked. Vactor's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "I didn't until today, but I've suspected for some time that Earth was hiding something about their military capabilities. Your husband's performance confirmed those suspicions. Subduing 3 trained Krellian warriors in seconds is not something a normal human can do. So what happens now?" Marcus asked, his body tense and ready. "That depends," Vactor said. "The Empire is in more trouble than most citizens know. Our borders are threatened by the Vorthan Collective. They have weapons and ships that match ours, and they're winning. We need every advantage we can get." "You want me to fight for you?" Marcus said flatly. "I want to make a deal," Vactor corrected. "The security footage from today has already been deleted. Officially, Zeklon attacked Mrs. Martinez and was subdued by building security. No one needs to know about your abilities." "In exchange for what?" Sarah asked. "Information," Vactor said. "How many other Juggernauts are there? Could they be convinced to help defend the Empire? Earth is part of us now. If we fall, your world falls with us." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "There are 412 of us still alive. We stay in contact through encrypted channels. Most are living quiet lives like I was. But if Earth was truly threatened, it will be if the Vorthans break through our defenses," Vactor said urgently. "They see humans as weak, easy prey. Your colonies would be their first target." "I need to think about this," Marcus said, "and talk to the others." "Of course," Vactor stood. "But don't take too long. Also, Mrs. Martinez, your position at the administrative building is secure. In fact, I'm promoting you to head of human resources. It's time we started treating your species with the respect you deserve." After he left, Sarah and Marcus sat in silence for a while. Finally, she spoke. 400 super soldiers could make a difference in a war. "Maybe," Marcus said, "but most of us left that life for a reason. We've seen too much death, caused too much destruction. Asking them to become weapons again, it won't be easy. But you'll try?" Marcus pulled her close. "If it means protecting Earth and keeping you safe, yes, I'll try." That night, Sarah watched as Marcus activated a communication device she'd never seen before. A holographic display appeared, showing faces of men and women from across human space. They looked ordinary: teachers, farmers, doctors, mechanics. But now she could see what she'd missed before. The way they held themselves, the alertness in their eyes, the subtle scars. "Brothers and sisters," Marcus began. "I know we swore to leave the past behind, but the past has found us. Earth needs the Juggernauts again." The debate lasted hours. Some were angry, others resigned. A few seemed almost eager, as if they'd been waiting for this call. Sarah made coffee and listened, learning more about her husband's past with each story shared. These people had saved humanity once before, at great personal cost. Many had lost friends, family, pieces of themselves. The government they'd served had abandoned them when they became inconvenient. Yet here was Marcus, asking them to serve again. "I'm not asking you to trust the Empire," Marcus said finally. "I'm asking you to protect our people. The Vorthans won't distinguish between enhanced and normal humans. To them, we're all the same weak species. But we know better, don't we?" One by one, they voted. When it was done, 307 had agreed to answer the call if needed. It wasn't all of them, but it was enough. As the communication ended, Sarah took Marcus's hand. "I'm proud of you. I just hope I haven't doomed us all," he said quietly. "The Empire fears us for a reason, Sarah. When Juggernauts go to war, worlds burn. Then Maybe it's time the galaxy learned that humans aren't as weak as they think, Sarah said. And maybe it's time you stop carrying this burden alone. She was just a janitor who had married a construction worker. But now she was something more, the wife of humanity's secret guardian, standing at the edge of a war that would change everything. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in her new office at the administrative building. The promotion to head of human resources had shocked everyone, especially the human workers. She used her position to immediately improve working conditions, fair wages, and proper representation. The Krellians who had once ignored her now had to show respect, though she could see the resentment in some of their eyes. Marcus had returned to his construction job, maintaining their cover while secretly coordinating with the other Juggernauts. They trained at night in abandoned warehouses, preparing for a war that grew closer each day. The news from the border was grim. 3 Empire worlds had already fallen to the Vorthans. Sarah was reviewing employee files when alarms began blaring throughout the building. The emergency lights bathed everything in red as panicked voices filled the corridors. She ran to the window and gasped at what she saw. The sky was full of ships, not Empire vessels, but the angular, black forms of the Vorthan fleet. They had somehow bypassed the defense lines and come straight for the capital world. Plasma fire rained down on the city as fighters screamed overhead. Her communicator buzzed. Marcus's voice was calm, but urgent. "Sarah, get to the basement shelter now. Don't wait for anything." "What about you?" she asked, already moving. "I'm coming for you. The Juggernauts are mobilizing. Just get to safety." Sarah ran through the chaos, helping other human workers find the emergency stairs. The elevators were offline, and Krellian security forces were in disarray. Some fled in panic, while others tried to maintain order. She saw Director Vactor organizing an evacuation, his age not slowing him down. "Mrs. Martinez," he called, "the emergency bunker is compromised. We need another way out." Sarah thought quickly. "The maintenance tunnels. I know them from my cleaning routes. They connect to the old transit system underground." "Lead the way," Vactor ordered. Sarah gathered as many people as she could, humans, Krellians, and other species all united by fear. She led them through service corridors she had cleaned 1,000 times, down into the mechanical levels of the building. The tunnels were narrow and dark, but they were away from the main attack. They had just reached the old transit platform when the ceiling shook. Dust and debris rained down as something massive hit the building above. Through the ventilation grates, they could hear the distinctive sound of Vorthan ground troops. The enemy was already landing. "We're trapped," someone whimpered. "No," Sarah said firmly. "My husband is coming." As if summoned by her words, figures emerged from the tunnel shadows. But these weren't rescue workers. 7 Vorthan soldiers in their distinctive black armor stepped into view, weapons raised. They were insectoid beings standing 7 feet tall with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the emergency lights. "Surrender." Their leader clicked an accented galactic standard. "You are prisoners of the Vorthan Collective." Vactor stepped forward despite his age. "I am Director Vactor of the Krellian Empire. These civilians are under my protection." The Vorthan leader made a sound that might have been laughter. "The Empire is finished. Your protection means nothing." He pointed at the humans in the group. "These weak creatures will make good slaves. The others will be processed for information." Sarah felt anger rise in her chest. After everything they had been through, to be called weak again was too much. "We are not weak," she said, stepping forward. "Silence, slave." The Vorthan raised his weapon. The wall exploded. Marcus burst through the reinforced concrete like it was cardboard. But he wasn't alone. 20 other figures followed him, moving within human speed and precision. The Juggernauts had arrived. The Vorthans opened fire, but the humans were already moving. Sarah watched in awe as her husband and his comrades showed the galaxy what enhanced humans could do. They dodged plasma bolts that should have been impossible to avoid. Their strikes shattered Vorthan armor like glass. In seconds, the enemy soldiers were down. But Marcus didn't stop to celebrate. He grabbed Sarah and pulled her close. "More are coming. We need to move everyone now." "The transit tunnels lead to the spaceport," Sarah said. but it's 5 miles through hostile territory. We'll clear the way, said one of the other juggernauts, a woman with short gray hair and scars across her face. Marcus, take point. Chun, and I will cover the flanks. They moved as a unit, the juggernauts forming a protective shell around the civilians. Sarah stayed close to Marcus, but she wasn't helpless. She had grabbed a Vorthan weapon and was ready to use it. Director Vactor seemed impressed by both her courage and the Juggernaut's efficiency. The journey through the tunnels was a nightmare of running battles. Vorthan forces had infiltrated the entire underground network, but they weren't prepared for humans who could punch through walls and move faster than their targeting systems could track. The Juggernauts were everything Earth's military had designed them to be, perfect weapons of war. But they were also still human. Sarah saw the pain in Marcus's eyes each time he had to kill. These weren't the eager warriors of propaganda films. They were men and women who had seen too much death already, but would face it again to protect the innocent. Halfway to the spaceport, they encountered serious resistance. A full Vorthan strike team had set up a barricade with heavy weapons. The tunnel offered no cover, nowhere to flank. We'll have to go through them, Marcus said grimly. Wait, Sarah said. She had been studying the maintenance maps on her datapad. There's another way. The water treatment pipes run parallel to this tunnel. They're big enough for people to crawl through. The gray-haired woman grinned. I like your wife, Martinez. She thinks like a juggernaut. They split up. Marcus led half the team through the pipes while the others prepared a distraction. Sarah went with Marcus, crawling through the dark, wet pipes behind him. She could hear the battle beginning in the main tunnel. Explosions and energy weapons creating chaos. They emerged behind the Vorthan position. The enemy never saw them coming. In close quarters, the Juggernauts were devastating. The barricade fell in minutes, and they reunited with the others. The spaceport is just ahead, Marcus reported, but it's going to be heavily defended. Then we hit them hard and fast, the gray-haired woman said. She looked at the civilians. Anyone who can hold a weapon, now's the time. We're all soldiers today. Sarah hefted her captured rifle. Around her, other humans did the same. Even some of the Krellians picked up weapons, following the human example. Director Vactor himself took a plasma pistol. You humans continue to surprise me, he said to Sarah. We're full of surprises, she replied. They burst from the tunnels into the spaceport like an avenging storm. The Vorthans had expected fleeing civilians, not a coordinated assault led by super soldiers. The Juggernauts carved through their lines while the armed civilians provided covering fire. Sarah stayed close to a group of human workers, the people she had spent months protecting in her new role. Now, they were protecting each other, proving that humans were far from weak. She saw Chun from the mailroom take down a Vorthan soldier twice his size. Maria from the cafeteria was treating wounded with field medicine skills nobody knew she had. The battle raged across the landing platforms. Empire evacuation ships were still launching, but Vorthan fighters strafed them mercilessly. They needed air cover, but the Empire forces were overwhelmed. Then, Sarah heard a sound that made her heart soar. The roar of human-built engines. A squadron of old Earth defense fighters screamed across the sky, weapons blazing. More juggernauts, these ones pilots who had kept their skills sharp. All civilians to the transports. Marcus shouted, We'll hold them here. Sarah helped herd people onto the evacuation ships. She saw families reunited, strangers helping each other regardless of species. In the face of extinction, the old prejudices seemed petty. But she wasn't leaving without Marcus. As the last transport prepared to launch, she found him with the other juggernauts, preparing for a last stand against approaching Vorthan reinforcements. Get on the ship, he said. Not without you, she replied. Sarah, I'm your wife. Where you go, I go. That's the promise we made. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. How'd I get so lucky? Clean living, she said, making him laugh despite everything. The Vorthan reinforcements arrived like a black tide. But the Juggernauts held the line, buying time for the last ships to launch. And beside them stood Sarah and the other armed civilians, proof that humanity's strength wasn't just in their enhanced soldiers, but in their ordinary people who refused to give up. The evacuation ship shuddered as it broke atmosphere, leaving the burning capital world behind. Sarah sat with Marcus in the crowded hold, surrounded by refugees of a dozen species. The Juggernauts had held the spaceport long enough for thousands to escape, but the cost had been high. They had lost 7 of their number, each death hitting the tight-knit community hard. Director Vactor approached them, looking older than Sarah had ever seen him. The Empire owes humanity a great debt. Without your Juggernauts, this evacuation would have been a massacre. We did what needed doing, Marcus said simply. What's the situation? Grim, Vactor admitted. The capital has fallen. Half our fleet is destroyed. The Vorthans are advancing on all fronts. He paused. The Empire Council is meeting on Haven Station. They're discussing terms of surrender. Surrender? Sarah couldn't believe it. After everything we just went through, they see no other option. The Vorthans have superior numbers and have somehow neutralized our defensive networks. Without a miracle, the war is lost. Marcus stood up. Then, maybe it's time for that miracle. He activated his communicator, sending a coded signal. Around the hold, other Juggernauts did the same. Within minutes, responses came flooding in from across human space. The 300 who had initially agreed to help had spread the word. More were answering the call. What are you planning? Vactor asked. Something the Vorthans won't expect, Marcus replied. They think they're fighting the Galactic Empire. They're about to learn they're fighting humanity. 3 days later, Sarah stood on the bridge of the Endeavor, Earth's last battleship from before joining the Empire. It was outdated by galactic standards, but had been lovingly maintained by veteran crews. All around them, a fleet was gathering. Not just military ships, but converted freighters, mining vessels, anything that could carry weapons and warriors. The Juggernauts had put out the call, and humanity had answered. Not just the enhanced soldiers, but regular people who refused to see their species enslaved. The ships were crewed by veterans, volunteers, and anyone who could help. Earth's colonies had emptied their armories, their factories working overtime to produce weapons and ammunition. This is insane, said Admiral Kess, the Krellian officer who had agreed to coordinate with the human forces. You have maybe 300 combat-capable ships against the Vorthan armada of thousands. Numbers aren't everything, Marcus said. He now wore combat armor, the first time in over a decade. The Vorthans expect Empire tactics, long-range engagements, careful maneuvering, fighting by the book. Humans wrote a different book. Sarah had been given a position in the tactical center, using her organizational skills to coordinate civilian ships. It turned out that years of managing cleaning schedules for a massive building translated well to military logistics. She watched the displays as more ships arrived every hour. Marcus, she said, highlighting something on her screen. Look at this. He came over and smiled. A group of modified cargo haulers had just jumped in, broadcasting friend codes. They were crewed entirely by humans who had worked in the service industries across the Empire. Janitors, cooks, maintenance workers. People the aliens had dismissed as weak and worthless. They're calling themselves the Invisible Fleet, Sarah reported, because nobody ever notices the service workers until they're gone. The day of the battle came too quickly. The Empire fleet, what remained of it, was making its last stand at Haven Station. The Vorthans had assembled their largest force yet, confident in their victory. They didn't notice the human ships hiding in the system's asteroid belt, powered down and running silent. Sarah watched from her station as the Vorthan fleet moved into attack position. They were beautiful in a terrible way, their black ships moving in perfect formation. On the main screen, Haven Station looked small and vulnerable, protected by barely 100 Empire vessels. All human forces, this is Sergeant Major Martinez. Marcus's voice echoed across the fleet. You know what's at stake. You know what they think of us. Today, we show them they're wrong. Today, we show them that humans don't break. Execute Operation Uppercut. The human fleet erupted from hiding. But they didn't form battle lines like the Empire forces. Instead, they scattered, each ship or small group pursuing individual targets. It was chaos, but organized chaos. Human pilots flew like madmen, using maneuvers that would have torn apart Empire ships. The converted freighters rammed into Vorthan vessels, their holds full of explosives. Mining ships used their industrial lasers as weapons, cutting through enemy armor. And in the middle of it all, the Juggernaut struck. 300 enhanced humans in powered armor, launching from stealth pods directly at the Vorthan command ships. Sarah watched Marcus's helmet feed as he and his team punched through the hull of a battleship and fought their way to the bridge. The Vorthans had never faced infantry that could tear through bulkheads with bare hands. "Sarah, I need targeting data for Sector 7, someone called." She refocused on her job, coordinating the civilian ships as they harassed the enemy flanks. The invisible fleet was living up to its name, appearing where least expected and vanishing before the Vorthans could respond. Years of being overlooked had taught them how to be unseen when it mattered. The battle raged for hours. The Vorthans' superior numbers began to tell, but they were paying for every inch of space. Human ships fought until they couldn't, then rammed their dying vessels into the enemy. Pilots ejected over enemy ships and used demolition charges on their hulls. It was desperate, brutal, and utterly unlike anything in galactic warfare doctrine. "Their formation is breaking," Admiral Kess reported in amazement. "The Vorthans are actually retreating from Sectors 3 and 5. Sarah checked her displays. The human forces had taken terrible losses, but they were still fighting. More importantly, their sacrifice had given the Empire fleet time to regroup and counterattack. Krellian battleships moved forward, supporting the human assault. "Marcus, status?" Sarah called over the comm. "We've taken their command ship," he replied, breathing hard. "Transmitting their tactical data now." "Sarah, you need to see this." Information flooded her screens. The Vorthans had expected an easy victory because they had been given inside information. Someone in the Empire had betrayed the defensive networks, sold out their own people for promised power under Vorthan rule. "It was Commander Zeklon," Marcus said. Before his arrest, he transmitted everything to the Vorthans. Defense codes, fleet positions, even the location of civilian shelters. Sarah felt sick, but not surprised. Zeklon's hatred had run deeper than anyone knew. But his betrayal had one flaw. He had dismissed humans as worthless, so he never included them in his intelligence. The Vorthans had planned for everything except a human response. "All ships, this is Director Vactor," the old Krellian's voice carried across the fleet. "The Vorthans are retreating. Press the attack. Drive them from our space." The combined human empire forces surged forward. The Vorthans, faced with tactics they couldn't counter and enemies they had underestimated, broke completely. Their retreat became a rout as ship after ship fled for the system's edge. Sarah allowed herself a moment of celebration, then returned to work. There were damaged ships to coordinate, rescue operations to manage. The battle was won, but the war wasn't over. The Vorthans would be back, but next time they would know what humans were capable of. Hours later, as the immediate crisis passed, she finally had a moment to breathe. Marcus found her at her station, still in his battle-scarred armor. He pulled her into an embrace, not caring who saw. "We did it," she whispered. "No," he corrected. "You did it. You and every other human who refused to be weak. The Juggernauts are weapons, but you showed them that all humans are fighters when it matters." Director Vactor approached them, accompanied by several other Empire Council members. "Mrs. Martinez, Sergeant Martinez. The Council has been discussing humanity's actions today." Sarah tensed, wondering if the Empire would now see humans as a threat. But Vactor smiled, an expression she rarely saw from Krellians. "The Empire owes its survival to humanity. Your species has proven that strength comes in many forms. The Council is unanimous. Humans will have full representation in Empire governance, equal status in all things. And we would like to formally request that Earth share its military expertise, including the Juggernaut program, for the defense of all Empire citizens." Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. It was more than they had hoped for. "That will be Earth's decision to make," Marcus said carefully. "But I think our people will agree. as long as it's a partnership, not servitude. Of course, Vactor agreed. He looked at Sarah. And, Mrs. Martinez, the council would like to offer you the position of Director of Interspecies Relations. Your actions today, coordinating so many different groups, proved you have a gift for bringing people together. Sarah felt overwhelmed. From janitor to director in mere weeks. I need to think about it. Take your time, Vactor said. But know that the Empire needs people like you. People who see potential where others see weakness. Later, aboard their quarters on the Endeavor, Sarah and Marcus finally had a moment alone. They sat together, looking out at the stars and the debris field that marked humanity's first major victory in galactic warfare. So, Sarah said, I guess our quiet life is really over. Marcus chuckled. I think at the end of the day, Zeklon threatened you. I'm sorry for that. I'm not, Sarah said firmly. We were hiding who we really were. You were hiding your strength, and I was hiding mine. Maybe it's better this way. Director of Interspecies Relations, Marcus mused. My wife, the diplomat. I like it. And my husband, the hero who saved the Empire, Sarah countered. I like that too. They sat in comfortable silence. Two humans who had changed the galaxy's perception of their entire species. The war wasn't over. The Vorthans would regroup and return. There would be more battles, more losses. But humanity had announced itself as a force to be reckoned with. The janitor and the construction worker had become so much more. And in the process, they had shown the galaxy that humans were never weak. They just knew when to be gentle and when to be strong. The Empire had beaten a human janitor, not knowing her husband was a Juggernaut. But more importantly, they had learned that every human had the potential to be extraordinary when defending what they loved. As Sarah drifted off to sleep in Marcus's arms, she smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but humanity would face them together. The galaxy would never underestimate them again.